Good evening and welcome to J&B Talk F1. Joining me today is Baden Westerweller as always, and I'm Jawad. How are you today, Baden?
Very well, thank you. Great to be here again.
Yeah, great to be here, and we'll be taking a look at qualifying for the British Grand Prix and, of course, the race itself, which is only a few hours away. So, overnight then, Lewis Hamilton claimed his 46th career pole position, out-qualifying his teammate Nico Rosberg by only a tenth of a second in the end. And it was a bit of a fizzer at the end of Q3 as both drivers were unable to improve their final flying laps, and this was due to a bit of wind kicking in. Hamilton backed out of his lap early on whilst Rosberg set a fast first sector but then fell away in the latter part of the lap, essentially handing Hamilton his pole position in front of his home crowd. The only one to improve in Q3 when it came to a fastest lap was Felipe Massa, who ended up qualifying third fastest for Williams, ensuring a second-row lockout for the Williams team ahead of Ferrari, crucially, who were led by Kimi Raikkonen. Danny Kvyat in the Red Bull was seventh fastest ahead of Carlos Sainz. Nico Hülkenberg lines up ninth, with Daniel Ricciardo in 10th. Ricciardo qualified in three places higher, but had his final lap in Q3 deleted by Noige the Cyberman Mansell, who was people going wide at Stowe Corner, turn 9, using the extra area for advantage, was deleting lap times. We'll also be looking at McLaren. Terrible qualifying for McLaren in front of their home crowd as well. 17th and 18th for Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button, and there was a scare for Fernando Alonso pre-qualifying as he had a fluid leak inside of his ERS system, which even when qualifying started it had not been repaired, so the team decided to send him on his way whilst the leak was still dribbling away. He was able to qualify 17th, but interestingly, after qualifying, a penalty was set to be applied to Alonso, who apparently used one of Jenson Button's tyres going out in qualifying. And that sounds pretty strange, doesn't it, Baden? Even though they've got all their sets allocated to them, he's using his teammate's tyre.
Oh, absolutely. It serves only to underline the comedy of errors which McLaren are enduring this season. It probably couldn't get any worse, but when it gets to this point, it really is quite laughable. But what's going to happen at the end of the day, really, he's probably going to cop another sanction, or if not anyway, he's going to be at the rear. So it's very academic ultimately, but even so, you do wonder in this professional era how this mix-up came to light. But there you go. It happened again to Alonso, and yeah, well, regardless, it's not going to really change his outcome on Sunday afternoon.
Well, we haven't heard anything regarding a sanction as yet, so we think that he's going to be fine in 17th. But going back up the order again, Toro Rosso, we mentioned Carlos Sainz before, qualifying 8th. His teammate Max Verstappen was audibly disappointed in qualifying 13th on this occasion, and it was very interesting to see how Toro Rosso's pace on the in the practice sessions. They were up in the top 5, top 6, and yeah, Max Verstappen unhappy with the balance of his car during qualifying, which has seen him knocked out in Q2 down in 13th. Both Lotus cars also knocked out of qualifying in Q2. Roman Grosjean 12th and Pastor Maldonado 14th. Sergio Perez is 11th in the Force India B-Spec car, as we said before. Hülkenberg 9th, his teammate. Both Saubers down in 15th and 16th with Marcus Ericsson and Felipe Nasr. And the Mana Marussias led by Will Stevens in 19th and Roberto Merri in 20th. So, as said before, it was a pretty busy day in the steward's office as Nigel the Cyberman, haha, Doctor Who joke, Nigel the Cyberman Mansell was deleting lap times for any driver who decided to go wide into Stowe Corner, turn 9. So using that runoff and just going straight on to get an advantage, he put the foot down and was deleting lap times. Cue the Noige.
Yeah, you could say for Noige, it was his opportunity to return his influence, which he's been lacking in recent years since his departure from the scene. Obviously, yeah, he endured his fair share of misfortune throughout the years. So to be in this position and have some kind of contribution, whether it was a little bit rough or not, yeah, it's still, I guess he obviously made full use of it, and he was quite a liberal in his use of the penalty, the sanctions for the minor indiscretions of hopping these particular corners.
And does it come back to the debate, Baden, about the way the tracks are being designed? Obviously, this is the new layout for Silverstone, even though Stowe is an old corner. Does it come back to the debate whether, circuits are almost easier to navigate than they used to be? Obviously there was probably, there was for certain gravel around there as well, and drivers using as much of the track as they can.
Well, quite clearly, if the gravel hadn't have been removed in the first instance, none of this would have come to light. As it is now, it was obviously an issue last season and the season before that at the exact same offending corner. This reaction is clearly in the line of safety and promoting these cars not suffering the ultimate price on race day, but yet this is now the counter influence it's having, and these people, obviously they've been granted this opportunity to utilise the widening almost of the radius of the corner ends up essentially making for a cleaner and might shave one tenth of a second, perhaps two off their lap, and it's hard really to fault them on this instance. If they had just had the gravel trap back in, yeah, then obviously this wouldn't happen, but there we go, it's being utilised, and as a result though that they're cracking down on them, and it was very rife throughout the session. Almost every other lap you could see that someone was having their time wiped from their session, ultimately costing them several places.
And it's something like that, in those dying stages of qualifying can be important, to have, say, for example, you're going for a pole lap and then that gets deleted as a result. That could be turmoil for a driver, but in terms of the pole position, there was nothing to do with that. No pole time was deleted, but that was qualifying. That was qualifying there. So on to the race now. Judging from the pace we've seen throughout the weekend, it should be another affair between the Mercedes AMG cars at the top. But a question will be, it remains to be seen whether Hamilton will get a good start or not. And, as we know, Baden, Hamilton didn't get a really good start in Austria, and that's what cost him the race win.
Well, it seems these past couple of races have a bit of precedence in it. Hamilton starts the weekend quite tardily on Fridays, gets his act together just in the nick of time in that third and final session, even for the solitary run in the dying stages, bangs it on pole as he's done now each time but one this season, yet he on Sunday butchers his starts, and this is where Nico seems to pretty much take with open arms the lead. So it shows you that, unlike last season, as we've emphasised in previous editions, that starting first doesn't seem to be the be-all and end-all as it was going back a few seasons. Now Nico can just sit there quite patiently alongside Lewis and be half expecting some sort of slip of the clutch from Lewis, but nevertheless you will be keen, the Briton, to put on his best best foot forward for his home crowd. But even so, going on the last couple of races, there's every chance that we could see the German leading the field into the second turn.
Indeed, and the start will be a very crucial one. Hamilton, as we know, will be spurred on by his adoring British fans, but Nico Rosberg, if he can get that good start and lead by the end of the first lap, proceedings could be in his favour. And as we're talking about the proceedings, it should be a one-stop affair as well, unless a safety car intervenes with the Pirelli medium and hard compound tyres. So come in somewhere midway through the race, change for the hard tyres, and you're basically on your way. So there's not much in the way of strategy then for this race. You won't be, if you can get the undercut, you'll be lucky, but otherwise jumping people in pit stops should not be very likely. But more, I guess, as much as you want to see a battle out the front, the battle for third place will be an interesting one, with Williams locking out the second row of the grid and Ferrari locking out the third row of the grid, both with the capability of all four cars with the capability of finishing on the podium. How do you think that's going to fare out?
Well, this is a point I'd been thinking about quite considerably in the lead up to this weekend, and naturally in the aftermath of qualifying. It really does appear that Williams have upped their game since notably Canada, where they were admittedly lucky to inherit that third place. But it seems they're now living up to this pre-season notion of being the second best team. They're really coming into their stride. Obviously, there couldn't be a better time to show that evidently at the British Grand Prix in front of their home crowd, whether it's something to do with the circuit just suiting their design specifically. But I think we're seeing right now that Ferrari are very much having to fight tooth and nail to retain that ascendancy of being best of the rest, rather than as they were earlier in the season when we saw them pretty much really hustling the Mercedes, giving them a real headache, as we saw at China following that very popular victory at Malaysia. And it's also interesting that we've seen Felipe Massa now outdoing Bottas, the highly fancied Bottas, who has of course been linked to Ferrari. And speaking of Ferrari, we've got Kimi Raikkonen, the man in the gun, and he's also outqualified Vettel for P5 on the grid. Whether this is a response to the criticisms which have been coming his way, notably since his first lap incident at Austria, which was quite hairy and took out his ex-teammate last season, Fernando Alonso. It's going to be interesting to see whether these notional number twos can keep the wood on their more highly fancied teammates during the race.
Yeah, and Raikkonen, after qualifying, was grilled about this, the fact that he outqualified his teammate and whether he was happy about it. And in typical Kimi fashion, he shrugged that off, saying that it's more important about what happens in the race, and ultimately he wants to finish ahead of everyone, not just his teammates. So if he can pull off a podium this evening, I guess some of the pressure will be taken off him in terms of delivering, but in comparison to his teammate, because ultimately your teammate is your biggest rival and you get compared to him more than you will anyone else in Formula One. If Vettel has got the better results over Raikkonen so far this season, but in that qualifying battle now, this is the second time Raikkonen has outqualified Vettel, Canada being the first time. So if Raikkonen can put together a good race, yeah, for sure, a good result could be on for him, potentially a podium too. But again, it depends on the start as well, and whether either of the Ferraris can get in between the Williams, because as I said before, it's a one-stop race guaranteed, and most of the work is going to be done on track. And what do you think of that?
Yeah, well, obviously from the line we're going to have Hamilton there. If he can get a clean start, then he'll naturally lead into the distance, and beyond the opening laps, it's hard to see where the Williams and Ferraris can take it to the Silver Arrows. So it's going to be very much this battle for third. All eyes will be on strategy. Who's going to be able to make the first set run longer, eke out those precious few seconds that'll prove decisive in the dying stages of the race. And obviously whether it's for Massa and Raikkonen, whether they can retain their advantage off the line.
Indeed, and that's something that Raikkonen has been good on, is eking out those tyres in the stints, making them work a bit longer. So it'll be interesting to see how they go over there. But going down the order a little bit, we'll talk about Red Bull quickly. And again, Daniel Ricciardo outqualified by his teammate Danny Kvyat, who's been a bit more comfortable in the car. Ricciardo, all throughout the weekend, has not been particularly happy with his the setup of his RB11. So come race day, it'll be interesting. Come this evening, it'll be interesting to see how Ricciardo fares against Kvyat. Kvyat starting higher up on the grid, 7th. Ricciardo starting 10th. And this was similar in Austria, but in the end, in Austria, Ricciardo finished higher than Kvyat, took the sole points. So what do we think is going to happen within the Red Bull stable?
Yes, well, I've seen really ever since Monaco. Really, it was a bit line ball. Obviously, Daniel had a very good Saturday there, but he ultimately was beaten across the Sunday by Kvyat when he basically let Kvyat go for that fourth place after his unsuccessful pitch at that third place. And from that moment, it seems that although both have had their struggles, that the Russian has indeed shown up Ricardo, and as a result, Ricardo's had his their moments of unhappiness, you could say. He's made these little indications that he might be considering his options. And as for this evening, we did see at Austria, Ricardo ultimately made it work on the Sunday. He fought really, scrapped really quite aggressively and very well. It was entertaining to see him take that final point position in 10th after claiming it from, I believe, was it NASA and the Williams there. So
Yeah, in
obviously,
the
Ricardo's
Silverstone.
racecraft, indeed, you couldn't say Ricardo's racecraft has been left wanting, but he's obviously left himself a fair bit to do on account of his Saturday performances. But as well, we should point out that last season he did indeed enjoy a very well fought third position, holding off Jenson Button's advances in the dying lap. So he's got some precedence at this circuit to do something, but whether he's going to be fighting for much more than 2 or 4 points, it's quite unlikely. Red Bull really have slipped considerably even from those initial races, from being third or fourth to now pretty much being the ones rounding out these points-paying positions.
Indeed, and I guess the rest of the points paying positions will, we've got some quick guys in the Force Indias and the Toro Rossos as well. It'll be interesting to see if Lotus can get amongst it as well. So ultimately, who do we think is going to win out of?
Well, going into this weekend, I was quite strong on Nico, as we both saw last weekend, not last race, I should say, a fortnight ago at Austria. That was academic. Nico was only outshone for that 1 or 2 lap period on the Saturday, and he ultimately uh, delivered the goods on Sunday. And I don't know, unless proven otherwise, I've got a feeling Nico's on a real roll here. He's got the potential if he can upset the apple cart this evening. And as an addendum to this, Lewis indeed from pole at home, he's never really converted that to a victory. So there are the stats there to suggest that Nico from P2 is a very strong chance, and I reckon he can do it. He can pull it off, and if this does happen, he's going to have very much the momentum in his favour if he can make it 4 victories from 5. But don't count me on that. It's not a foregone conclusion. There's every possibility Lewis could just trounce the field, but I'm feeling very much the warmth gravitating towards Nico at this stage.
I'd love to say the same thing as well. In my Autosport predictions, I put down Nico for the win despite having Lewis for the pole position, with that Austria race still very much in mind. And I'm pretty sure my good friend Pat, who I'm going to give a shout out to here, will be unhappy for me to say that I'm going with Nico instead of Lewis for the win. So I'm with you on this one, Baden. I think Nico, if he gets that good start, could put one over Lewis. And that about wraps up our pre-race show. We're going to be back Wednesday, of course, as always, and we've got quite a bit to get through on Wednesday as well, some of which we're going to be talking about these news changes the strategy group has brought forward, including Saturday sprint races. We'll also talk a bit about Mark Webber's biography that came out last week as well, which both of us have been reading, and I know I'm enjoying it. What about you, Baden?
Yes, well, I've made some fairly significant headway since the acquisition on the Thursday. I'm probably about nearing halfway distance. I'm very much through Webber's formative years in F1, but I will save most of this for Wednesday. What I want to allude to, though, is initially his very telling remarks about his stint at Mercedes around those Le Mans days. He was very much keen to elaborate that he was in the gun as a result of those infamous accidents which took place in '99, and there was no love lost between the German squad Mercedes and Webber in regards to who was considered at fault. And they had started their relations on, you could say, very much acrimonious terms, which was really, you could say, mirrored when he departed Formula One, quite disgruntled following what took place at Red Bull ultimately before he went back to LMP1 with Porsche last season. And on that note as well, he talks very significantly about Williams being a big mistake in his career. He thought that was the one that was going to prove the key to his breakthrough, and he pretty much emphasised that halfway through that first campaign in 2005, he was told in no uncertain terms that he wasn't really wanted by Frank Williams and Patrick Head, and they were quite happy to see the back of him if it was possible. So it was very revealing, and obviously we'll have made further progress by the Wednesday, and we'll give you a really detailed account of his insights over his career.
Yeah, indeed, and I'm just coming up to the 1999 season with Mercedes at the moment. So by the time we get to Wednesday, we'll definitely be deeper into our readings and we'll have a lot more to talk about. So yeah, we've got that to look forward to. As I said, we're going to be talking about sprint races and the strategy group, Aston Martin's potential link up with Red Bull as well, and of course a full wrap of the British Grand Prix race. So from me, Jawad, and Baden, thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the race. Good night.